The VIX really did spike up to, I think, over 60, maybe the highest it had been since the pandemic first hit. How much attention should the Fed pay to that volatility index, what it might be telling us about how the markets are functioning?
I actually think that the SEC and the relevant exchanges may want to pay a bit of attention. My understanding is that because there are some illiquid instruments that go into the calculation of the VIX had a somewhat artificial movement on Monday, that if one looks at the VIX futures, which are a somewhat different instrument, the movements were much, much less dramatic. So I certainly had my attention caught by the VIX early in the day on Monday, but as I have looked into it, I think you were learning more about issues around liquidity in the options markets than you were about some profound reassessment of the American economy. And since that is so widely watched an indicator, issues of liquidity, issues around how it settles, I think should be studied by the relevant parties in the industry and the regulator, the SEC.
Larry, we spent much of the week with various people giving advice to the Fed. It included our former president, Donald Trump, on Thursday in a long news conference in which he addressed it, reiterating he thinks the president should have some say over monetary policy and rate setting, including saying, boy, he'd made an awful lot of money and he thinks he knows better than the chair of the Fed. You had a reaction to that. I know you posted on that question. Give us your sense about how dangerous that could be.
I guess I can't say I was surprised by ex-President Trump because he had said things like that before, but I sure was appalled at how bad an idea it was. I mean, start with the preposterous arrogance. The central bank has 19 members of the FOMC who spend more or less all their time scrutinizing every economic statistic. The president's got a lot of things to do at any given moment and is actually much less close to the economy. God knows the skills associated with being an economic forecaster and the skills associated with being a successful real estate operator are very, very different ones. So I don't think there's any particular reason to think that a president of the United States would have a intellectual contribution to make. And the reason why countries all over the world, this isn't just an American thing, but countries essentially all over the world have moved to independent central banks is that they recognize a profound conflict of interest. Who's ever in an elective or political office always is tempted to print more money, lower interest rates, hit the accelerator hard to get a boost to the economy to make people feel good. But when everybody sees that coming, it doesn't actually make people feel good. It just raises the expectation they have for inflation. So you get more inflation and you don't get any substantial output gain. That's what happened when President Nixon was involved in bashing Fed Chair Arthur Burns around the 1972 election. That's what's happened innumerable times in Latin America. And that's why the lesson has been pretty well internalized in the vast majority of mature democracies, that you keep central banks independent because having the politicians involved is a fool's game. The Fed doesn't listen, so you don't cut short-term interest rates, and the markets do, and so long-term interest rates go up with inflation expectations, and so you end up with higher inflation and a weaker economy.